This is Virus the Poet, and you are listening to Vroom Vroom Veer with Jeff Smith, reminding you to check out virusthepoet.com for all things poetry. And remember, don't just listen to the lines, read between them.
Well done. I'll trim out the mistakes. That much editing I can do. No worries.
Uh,
It's all
that's
good.
good.
I like mistakes. They're my favorite
Yeah,
things.
for sure. For
So
sure.
let me hit stop. I'll be right back.
No problem.
Are you ready to thoughtfully steer away from your revved up, frenzied, and far too often scripted life? Then welcome to Vroom Vroom Veer with Jeff Smith, where he guides you down the road differently traveled by sharing unique experiences with guests who have managed to shift away from a life stuck on cruise control and veered their way into a more authentic and fulfilling one in all sorts of interesting and kind of remarkable ways. Get ready to Vroom Vroom Veer with your differently traveled road chauffeur, Jeff Smith.
Staci B, thank you so much for being on Vroom Vroom Veer and welcome to the show. How's it going?
I'm really happy to be here. And if I'm honest, I'm really glad that the recording is taking place now, because about an hour ago, I got a verbal tsunami thrown at me from somebody I don't know. I got a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. It's not normal for me to pick up on something like that, but
Right.
my gut said to do it. And this woman just came at me about somehow she found my number associated with the art gallery that's in the building where I live.
Oh my goodness.
And I really had to work to come back to me.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that I'm most grateful for in my life is that I have those tools.
Totally. I know
That first of all,
what you're
I
talking about.
recognized,
Yeah.
okay, I was in the middle of a tsunami. I did not ask for this. Right? Because I think sometimes the whole new age community is about us creating everything.
Sure.
Well, can I swear on this show?
You fucking can swear. Yes.
Awesome. Okay.
You can fucking swear as much as you want. We like F-bombs. We like shits, dams, all of them. Yes.
So I think that sometimes shit just happens.
Yes.
I didn't create that. I didn't ask for that. And maybe at some point in time, I'll understand why it happened, but I can decide whether or not I want to take the energy to explore and investigate that.
Right. But why?
And maybe something good will come of it. I don't know.
Right.
But my point in this moment is that it just messed with my head so bad.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I was in a very calm, grounded space preparing for this. And then, boom, out of left field.
Somehow that seems appropriate. I'm sorry that happened, but it doesn't seem like I'm getting Staci full bore if you're in your calm space.
Well, that's geez, we've known each other for all of 5 minutes. Should I be frightened?
Maybe.
Oh my God.
I'm
sorry. But you are correct.
I'm sorry that happened. Yeah.
That's okay. But
yeah.
you are correct about that. And I don't mind being assertive, and I don't mind speaking up for myself or for others who, for whatever reason, can't find their voice in that moment. But aggressive is just unnecessary.
Yeah.
Like, don't yell. You called me, bitch. You called me. I have no idea how you got my phone number. Thank God it was my Google number. Like, I'd have really been worried had she had my actual phone number.
I do that too. Yeah. I learned that. Yeah, that's a good trick. Everybody out there that doesn't have a Google Voice phone number, they're free and everybody can get one.
Absolutely.
Just go get yourself a Google Voice number and replace that with your actual number out there on all the web pages. And
all the internets.
The people that have your number are the people that you gave your number to, not computers.
Exactly.
Wow,
and
that's a good public service tip that we.
It is a little, because Google needs the promotion, but okay.
No, screw Google.
The one thing I will say is, if you really want to keep your privacy, make sure that when you return the call or you return a text, that you get online and pull up the Google Voice page and call them from that number. Because if you call them from your cell phone or if you still have a landline, then they've got your number.
Even if you try to block that ID, it doesn't work.
Right. So just make sure that you go to the place where you signed up for the number and return the call or text it that way.
That's a good idea. I never do. I just spam them and block them, but it's a good advice. Like anybody that I don't know that calls me on my phone, and most of those are going to my Google number because, CA. But if I see spam, or even if it might be somebody I know and they don't leave a message, spam block.
Yep.
Because if you know me, you're going to leave me a message, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Well, and without giving away my phone number, I lived in Tampa for 10 years.
Yeah.
So my area code is 813.
Right.
Which is like the international capital of car warranty phone calls.
Oh, lovely. Great.
So when I would call people with an 813 phone number that didn't know me,
sure,
they assumed I was calling to sell them a car warranty.
Yeah, that's how they actually, that same thing happened to me. Like the spammers they figured out your area code, and then they spoof a 6.
Yes, they do.
Like my number is 626, which is a really weird number. It's like some strange neighborhood in and around LA, the Valley or something like that. I can't remember. But I would see a 626 number and just sort of assume, oh, I must know that person. It's 626.
Right.
Now that's years and years and years ago.
Or it's a doctor's office calling to confirm an appointment.
Yeah,
or,
right. Sure. Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Well,
cybersecurity 101 here. I like it.
Well, and point number 2, use your powers for good, Batman.
Right.
If you're that freaking smart that you can do that, you can change the world for the better.
Yeah, they don't. Yeah. It's so sad. So sad.
Yep, it is.
So you still are Staci B, and you are still at stacib.com. So talk a little bit about what you're most excited about in your business and your website over there at stacib.com.
Well, I'm excited about 2 different things. The first one is I am publishing a 20th anniversary edition of my second novel called Where Fat Girls Haven't Gone. When it came out in 2004, when it came out in 2004, I was a different person, I hope, right? Because that was 20 years ago.
One would hope you were a different person.
Secondly, the world was not ready for it.
Okay.
Interesting bit of trivia, 2004 is the year The Biggest Loser debuted.
Oh, wow. Okay.
On NBC.
Right.
Okay. So there was no Chrissy Metz. There was no Joy Divine from The Holdouts winning an Oscar. There was none of that back then.
Right.
So when I realized it was the 20th anniversary, I was like, I'm ready to tell the story again.
Okay.
There have been changes in terms of discrimination and perception and stuff, but it's not about that. It's about I'm ready to share this again. Because it's not really about being fat. It's about
being okay with what is, right?
That's part of it.
Right.
But more deeply, because I can be a pretty deep person, I've been told. What's underneath all of that is the cost of going after your dream and the price you pay for standing where you are.
Wow. Say that again.
The cost that comes from going after your dream and the price you pay from staying where you are.
Okay.
Because there's a cost to everything in life, right?
Everything has cost. Yeah.
Everything has a price.
Right.
You get to decide which price you want to pay.
True.
Because going after my dream and walking away from a 6-figure salary in 1998 has not been a bed of roses.
Okay.
I can tell you that.
It had
I've
cost.
been homeless.
Right.
I've been homeless.
Right. Wow.
I mean, there have been a lot of things that have happened.
Right.
Not only because I went after my dream, but because of unresolved trauma.
Right.
That was driving my behavior.
Right.
But, I think most people don't realize there's a cost to everything. Totally. And that's really the message of the book because it's told from 2 different perspectives. The main character and the production assistant who's on the reality show that she is the host for called Where Fat Girls Haven't Gone.
Wow. Okay.
So every week.
Like a fun book.
It is a fun book. It's a lot of, because I like to think I'm pretty funny.
Okay.
Sometimes. And so it's got a lot of humor in it. It's got a lot of stuff that will just make you think.
Right.
And like I said, I was ready to tell this story. So it'll be out as an ebook for the 20th anniversary edition. September 1st is my target date right now.
Nice.
And on the website, what I really, really love talking about is nervous system regulation.
Yeah.
I call myself a nervous system regulation evangelist.
I love it.
Even though that word has a charge to it.
And we're all doing it. So we'll get into that more. We're all doing it either in a good way or otherwise. Right?
Or you're ignoring it, you know?
Yeah, if you ignore it, I think you're like, if it's me, right? And I'm like freaked out and I don't know what to do with myself. I usually don't do healthy things.
Well, and most people don't, Jeff.
Right.
They get a beer or a glass of wine.
Right.
They buy a bag of Doritos or an ice cream cone.
Yes, Doritos.
They go to the
nacho
gym.
Cheese for fuck's sake. Not that Cool Ranch shit.
OG. Gotta go with the OG Doritos.
That's right.
Even things like going to the gym.
Yeah.
If you're doing that at an obsessive level, it's just as toxic as eating a bag of Doritos.
You know what people in this country and maybe Western world are really addicted to? Work.
That too.
Work.
I mean, we're the country that made yoga a competitive sport.
I know. It's crazy.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. But I just watched Joe Rogan and Adam Sandler talk for nearly 3 hours. It was really fun. But what I took away from this is here are two people that are richer than most people can even imagine. I don't even want to know how much money they have. And yet they still work their asses off. Why?
What are you running from?
Exactly. What are you running from?
That's the question.
Can't you just chill out and enjoy? Like, who I am proud of is Eddie Murphy. Like, Eddie Murphy was like the man for years. I lost count of how many movies, how rich, how successful, how famous, how awesome. And then he was like, you know what? Let's not do this anymore and just hang out with the kids because I don't need to work. Right. He did that successfully, raised a bunch of really cool kids, apparently, I'm guessing there. But then now he's an empty nester. He's like, maybe I'll go have some fun. Right. I think he's got like this really good attitude towards work. It's like, if it's chill, and
if I enjoy
it. Right. Exactly.
Is the juice worth the squeeze?
Is the juice worth the squeeze? Yes.
That's the question.
Yeah. Is it going to be fun? Is it going to be a challenge? Am I going to grow? Or am I just doing it for a paycheck?
And you know what? If you are, that's fine. Zero judgment.
Yeah, totally.
But know the answer to the question.
Right.
That's my thing. Have the courage to ask the question and then have the courage to take the next step based on the answer you got. That's all.
Go. Yes.
It's not complicated.
It's not.
It's not. But most people don't even have the ability to sit still for 5 or 10 minutes.
Right.
Without some weed or whatever their substance of choice is. I know people who they smoke weed and they're like the Energizer Bunny because it focuses them.
Right.
Me, I smoke weed. I lay on the couch with a bag of Doritos and whatever's on TV, leave me the fuck alone.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there are people who are able to focus because of it. So I don't mean to eliminate people who fit into that category, but just to sit still with yourself, just sit still and listen to some music.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Totally. It doesn't have to be meditation. I think is a scary word for a lot of people because they think they need to sit in full lotus, with their hands cupped in their lap, saying "Om." And is that a kind of meditation? Absolutely, it is.
I think walking in nature, or sitting in nature. That's like one of my favorite morning routines. Is just sitting in my back patio when it's not 110 degrees at 8 o'clock in the morning, and just, hey, look, there's the lizard doing push-ups. Look at those crazy hummingbirds. What the hell are they doing? They're playing grab ass in my backyard.
Exactly.
It's awesome.
It is. It is. And we miss out
the best show ever. Hey, and I'll add, it's extra special on weed.
Exactly. Well, you know what? I have a funny story that I'm going to tell. And if you decide to edit it, that's fine. But this is fucking hilarious.
Please.
So I was in my namaste era.
Sure. We've all been
okay,
there.
about 20 years ago.
Sure.
And I had a house in Tampa that had a pool in the backyard and it wasn't covered. So the ecosystem was banging.
Bonkers.
Okay.
Yes. Full on blooms.
full on. And I have always had an issue with cockroaches. They're like the only insect that just wigs me out.
Yeah.
I can handle spiders. I can handle everything else, but the cubs, something about them.
Creepy. Yes.
Creepy. So again, remember, I'm in my namaste era.
Right.
And I'm in the pool, and I always got in the pool to skim it. That was meditation for me.
Okay.
To get in the pool with the skimmer and do it inside the pool instead of walking around it outside.
Okay.
So I'm inside the pool, and I go over to the bucket. Forget what that's called, where all the swishy stuff happens in the basket.
Okay.
And I open the lid, and there's a cockroach in there circling the drain, literally.
Okay.
And I had a come to Jesus moment. I'm like, what are you going to do about this? if you're all like sentient life, Buddhist, Siddhartha, whatever,
right.
How can you let that die?
Right.
Because that's a life.
Sure.
So I girded my loins.
Yes.
And I got the skimmer net, and I took the cockroach out of the water and put it gently on the concrete for it to dry itself out.
Yeah.
It's on its back, legs twitching, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
I'm standing there feeling so damn proud of myself.
Look at me.
You go, Staci.
Look at me. I saved a
at me.
Yeah.
I have saved a cockroach's life. I have healed my issue with cockroaches. And out of nowhere comes a gecko and eats it for lunch.
But that's okay. You did your part.
And I was like, the whole message is it's not within your control, bitch.
Well, it's not, but I'm going to say this though. Like, I've been there. I had a condo that I didn't own the pool, but there was a pool there. And I not skimming because it's not my pool, not my job, but occasionally in my namaste phase, I would save a bug just to save a bug, right? Why not? And I'm totally cool with that bug thence getting eaten by a gecko. That's circle of life, baby.
It's so funny because when I was in the pool, after my little feelings that were hurt,
right.
I got through that. I was like, Hakuna Matata, baby.
Exactly. That's it. That's circle of life. That's right.
But the ego,
right.
of thinking that I was the savior.
Yeah.
Of this cockroach, and then just having this gecko fly in out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And it's like, look, a buffet.
Yeah. Totally. Yes.
Hilarious.
We remind me to come back to this because I have lots of thoughts on bugs and ego and life and death, but let's move on.
Okay.
Because that was really fun, though.
It's a funny story. I actually wrote an essay about it because I think it's hilarious.
It is great.
Because I love calling myself on my own shit.
Yes.
I don't get greater joy out of anything than calling myself on my own bullshit.
Yeah.
Because
I can tell a very embarrassing story that proves that God exists to beyond a shadow of a doubt, to me only, obviously.
Right.
I mean, anybody else, they'll just go, well, that's a dumb story. You're an idiot. Right. But to me, it's like, okay, there's no other explanation for that amount.
Right. That's how I felt. Because I've said for decades, God's a funny guy.
Totally. He thinks I'm hilarious.
Exactly. And I mean, that was one of the most hilarious things that has ever happened to me. I was all in my feels about how wonderful I was and how I'd healed myself.
That is totally God giving you a smack.
Totally hilarious. So that was before I had nervous system regulation in my life. So it took me a little longer to get through that probably. But it's just, I'm a journalist as well. I've written a bunch of pieces on nervous system regulation.
Okay.
Steve Porges, who created polyvagal theory, is someone that I communicate with.
We have to get into that.
Yeah, he's an amazing human being. And he and his son just published a book called Our Polyvagal World, which is for lay people.
Okay.
It's not for therapists and scientists. It's on Amazon. Wow. I don't get any remuneration other than the knowledge that
I've never heard this polyvagal term before.
Well, polyvagal theory is what nervous system regulation is based upon.
So I've had extra excitable vagus situation in my life since basic training. So 18 years old. So that basically manifests as first I passed out after I got like the boop, 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 boop of inoculations in each arm on each side. I don't remember how many shots I got with guns all at once, but they know, like the military people know, like a lot of people pass out when they get that many shots in a row. So they make you sit down, right? So
what about doing them in 2 sessions? Do that?
Somebody's going to pass out. So I passed out, right? Never before had I had any sort of vagus kind of vagal, what do they call it? Vasovagal syncope or whatever they call that. So basically it's a way of the medical system to say that's why you passed out, right? You just had a shock and your vagus nerve said, let's go to sleep. This isn't fun. So I passed out. But then later, like that turned into a full on like needle phobia, where even if I would go in and get like just a flu shot, pass out. And it's still with me. So like I can now like talk myself through it, right? Like the last time I passed out was when I went in to get a surgery. And when they just plug you into an IV like you're in a meat shop. And thankfully, nobody noticed that I passed out in the little chair in the waiting room to go get my surgery. I just passed out, woke up, went, oh yeah, I passed out. All right. Nobody saw that. Good. But yeah, I think that's the last time it happened. So we should talk about this multivagal.
Yeah, it's really, really important. And anybody in the mainstream who is not a medical professional would not even know the term vagus nerve without Stephen Porges.
Okay. Wow.
Besser van der Kolk wrote The Body Keeps the Score. I think the first edition came out somewhere in the late 90s. And Porges was actually working in NICUs.
Okay.
At the time.
So that's neonatal ICU.
The neonatal ICUs with babies who would not stop crying.
Okay.
And what he realized was that they did not feel safe.
Right. Okay.
That's what it comes down to.
Right.
When you don't feel safe, and your amygdala controls that, the piece of your brain in the back, in the way back of your skull,
lizard
brain, like Seth Godin and a bunch of other people call it. But the amygdala controls that.
Okay.
And what people also don't realize is the vagus nerve is responsible for supporting all of the organs that operate on their own.
Right.
So your heart, your digestive system, your lungs, all of that is supported by the vagus nerve. It shuts down. I mean, that's an extreme case, passing out, right? I mean, but lots of other things happen. Typically, you get triggered into fight, flight, freeze.
Right.
You get triggered into survival mode when your vagus nerve starts to shut down.
Right. To me, it manifests. Okay, sure, I pass out.
You froze. That's the ultimate freeze.
Very funny story. Like I of course, I was in the military 20 years, and then I had a DOE job, Department of Energy job. Mm-hmm. So federal government theoretically can test you for marijuana if they want to. So then when I quit my job, I started smoking weed again. And I hadn't smoked weed since like high school, right? So one time I smoked a little bit too much weed and I passed out. Yeah. And that's totally not, I don't think that's the weed. That's my body reacting to something that was novel, right?
Well, and a lack of control.
Right. Exactly.
Which does not feel safe.
Right. It's like, my vagus nerve was like, we're out.
Exactly. And that's there are things you can do to stimulate the vagus nerve. And let me be clear, I am not a medical or health professional.
Right.
I'm a journalist. I've researched this.
Right.
I've used it on myself. I actually have a free wiki on my website.
Okay.
So if you go to stacib.com, and it's Staci with an I, stacib.com, the nervous system, it's under nsr.wiki for nervous system regulation. It's the second tab.
Okay.
A ton of stuff.
Okay.
Books, videos, audios, YouTube videos. I have personally used everything.
Yeah. And it all works.
So I have vetted it. But it might not work for you.
Right. Yeah.
And see, that's the thing, because we live in a McDonald's drive-through society. I pay you the $7, you give me my fucking Big Mac. That's not how nervous system regulation works.
Right.
Okay?
You might need a quarter pounder with cheese.
You very well may. The Big Mac might not work for your body.
You might need the McRib. We don't know.
So you've got to be in a place, in my opinion, where you've got to be willing to experiment.
Totally.
You've got to be willing to say, I'm going to give this a try. And I personally like to ask myself, how long are you comfortable committing to this experiment for?
Right. Okay.
And sometimes it's an hour, sometimes it's a week, sometimes it's a month. Okay. Whatever it is that because we all know what that feels like in the gut, right?
Which one? What
are you willing to do? And you say something and you feel in your gut whether or not that's okay with you.
Right.
Right.
Yes. Okay.
So if it's a day, let it be a day. If it's a week, let it be a week. Okay. Do that exercise for that length of time. Oh, okay. And then after that time is expired, you reevaluate.
Oh, I see.
Am I willing to go on?
It's like a little test. Is this working
exactly
for me?
It's an experiment.
Right.
Is this working? Do I feel good doing this?
Right.
Is this helping me in any way?
Right.
And then if it's not, then you go to something else. There are a billion nervous system regulation exercises.
Yeah.
To do. Sure. And some of them are so simple. I will do some of them in the car while I'm sitting at a stoplight.
Sure.
Because one of them is just taking the top part of your ear in your thumb and index finger and just going clockwise.
Interesting.
And that will stimulate your vagus nerve. And my tell is I yawn. And that's a tell for a lot of people. But you're going to have to figure out what your tell is. Just
so
because
when you
mine's
say
yawning,
like, stimulate your vagus nerve, you're doing this in a way that you're intending to calm yourself. Is that the intent?
Right. And I know it kind of seems oxymoronic, but when you stimulate your vagus nerve, you get calmer.
Interesting. Okay. Wow.
So there are lots of things.
Does this are there things that are like pre-trigger, post-trigger kind of ideas? Like if you're in that already panic state of, I need the fucking Doritos, is it too late?
No, it's not. It's never too late.
Okay.
The issue there, at least for me, is catching myself in that moment.
Right. Before
the bag gets open. Exactly. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
If you can do that, if you can catch yourself prior and and to be honest with you, I've caught myself after I've had a few.
Sure.
And I've gone, is this really what I want to do?
Right. Yes.
Yeah, that has taken me years and years and years.
Totally. But that's what
But it's possible.
That meditation thing is to me, like meditation is always more like trying to create that space between
exactly what it is.
Like your reaction, right?
Between your thought and your
reaction.
body.
Right. It's like, you suddenly I'm freaked out. Right. So can you have a little space there going, at least be aware, right? Step one, be aware that you are freaked out.
Right. And sometimes that's not possible depending on how severe the trigger is.
Right.
You know, like I was at a family event a couple years ago and I got triggered before I even knew what was happening. I was shut down.
Right.
I was just shut down.
It happens.
I didn't faint.
Overwhelmed. Yeah.
I was completely overwhelmed. Now the red flags show up sooner. Now I'm more aware of them. The red flags had probably been there. If I were able to actually be in a time machine and go back and watch myself, the red flags were there.
Sure.
I just wasn't capable of seeing them in the moment.
Right.
And so the other piece to this, which is probably the most important thing of all, is self-compassion.
Yes.
Because you're not always going to catch it before half the bag of Doritos is gone. You're not always going to catch it.
There are worse things. There are worse things, right?
Like, you're not going to always catch it at first.
Of cocaine, and you could be dead in some.
Well, and and sometimes that happens. I mean, I had my time with cocaine, but the way I'm neurologically wired, my boyfriend bought an 8-ball one night when I was living in New York.
Yeah, nice.
And we shared it with a couple of people. And it's 5 o'clock in the morning, and he's like, zoom, vroom, if you will, ready to go. And I'm like, I want to go have pancakes. He was not happy.
Wow.
That I wanted food on cocaine.
Wow.
But everybody's body is different.
Sure.
Yeah.
And
so that's why this is a very personal, very individual journey.
Right.
You cannot compare yourself to anybody else.
Right.
It's just, it will only harm you.
Right. You got to figure it out for you.
Right. But it helps with anxiety.
Uh-huh.
I wrote a Substack for a year and I did a series while I was doing that called Nervous System Regulation Before and After.
Okay.
And what I did was I wrote a few paragraphs about a situation that I actually had.
Right.
And then I wrote about it. And then I wrote a few paragraphs about what it looked like without nervous system regulation.
Okay.
And what it looks like with it.
See, that's perfect.
Because I didn't see anybody giving the three-dimensional details like that.
That's good.
You know?
Yeah.
Because one night, I wanted to try this restaurant. Somebody said they had the best hoagies in the area. And I felt the anxiety about going to someplace unknown in an unknown neighborhood.
Okay.
And I did some nervous system drills, and I was able to go get my hoagie. Do you guys have Aldi where you are?
Aldi's? Aldi?
Well, it's Aldi. It's not Aldi's, the grocery store.
Yeah. No, we don't.
Okay.
I don't think we have it in Vegas, but I know it because we were in England. So I know Aldi's.
Well, they're a European company.
Right.
They're I don't know. They have stores all over the United States.
Right.
Anyway, one of their claims to fame is you have to put a quarter in to get a cart.
Right.
You have to lease the cart, right? So in that experience with me going to get the hoagie, I walked in and didn't realize the person sitting on the bench was waiting for her sandwich. And I just walked up to the counter to order, and she harumphed or something that made me recognize that. And I wasn't in the best of neighborhoods, let me be clear. And I looked over and she was visibly not happy. And I said, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Were you ahead of me? I didn't realize it, with you sitting on the bench." And she's like, "No, that's okay." And then at the very end of the experience, they only take cash. And I was 25 cents short. And she gave me a quarter.
Wow.
And I'm like, well, as long as it's not your Aldi quarter, I'll take it. So I ended up having this beautiful interaction with a stranger.
Sure.
Where we both got a good laugh. I got a great sandwich. She got what she came in for.
Yeah.
All because I was able to regulate my nervous system before I went.
Right. That's awesome.
And that's the power of that.
Yeah, totally.
Because I think a lot of people don't even realize the things they avoid doing.
Right.
Because of the anxiety or fear. I mean,
right.
Anxiety is a relatively new word.
Sure.
In the vernacular.
Right.
And I know
it's
older people in particular.
Like, I don't want to, kind of like.
Right.
Right.
And then because your mind's job is to think, you come up with all kinds of logical reasons why you shouldn't.
Okay.
Which means you never deal with the anxiety.
Right.
Because well, I have food in the refrigerator and I don't really need to spend the $15.
Right.
And, I'm tired. I don't know that I feel like taking the elevator and getting in the car and all logical reasons, but completely discount the anxiety.
Right. Wow.
So if you're an intelligent person, I will guarantee you are doing that about stuff. And not even realizing
it. Yeah.
Right. That you have anxiety or whatever other word you want to use, trepidation. Like I said, anxiety almost has become a charged word in our society.
Right.
It was not used until recently.
It's like a reason to get weed, right? That's
right. Right.
Yeah,
I have anxiety.
I got a diagnosis for anxiety. Hey, guess what? Everybody has anxiety.
What the fuck are you going to do about it?
Just smoke weed?
Right. And if that's your choice, no judgment.
No judgment. Right.
That keeps me from living the life I want to live.
Right.
That's why I don't choose that as an out on a regular basis.
Right.
Like I have to be really fucked up
to want to have some weed,
to want to smoke weed. And this is coming from somebody who, like, I envisioned myself in a tie-dyed sundress, sitting on a porch swing, smoking joints in my 70s. So, like it's something I always thought I'd be doing on a regular basis the rest of my life. And again, no judgment. Everybody does it for their own reasons.
Right.
To me, it comes back to, is this giving me the life I want to live?
Totally. So I want to get like that story about how you figured out. So let me ask this. So are you diagnosed neurodivergent now?
I have chosen not to get an official diagnosis for a bunch of reasons. First of all, is my incredible resistance to being forced to take pharmaceutical intervention.
I hate, yes, I'm with you.
Okay. I don't want that.
Yeah, I don't want to.
I'm 61. I am not a kid.
Right.
So, and I'll be honest with you, this is also a very interesting conversation that I don't know that they will figure out before I draw my last breath.
Right.
But at this moment in time, they do not know the difference between born with neurodivergence and trauma-induced neurodivergence.
Interesting. Okay.
They don't know the difference. Some
maybe
people
there
may say
isn't a difference. Maybe.
Because I don't remember being like this as a child.
Okay.
Okay. Like, and the other thing, and I'm kind of ping-ponging here, but women in particular and people of color in particular are really at a disadvantage here because the majority of the research about ADHD or autism has all been done on white males.
You could say that about like most research.
Right. and it manifests differently, right?
Totally.
Like, because most people think ADHD, they think of the boinga, boinga, boinga little boy.
Right.
Right? Who can't sit down, who can't sit still.
Right.
But the hyperactivity can be internal in your mind.
Okay. All right.
Okay?
Right.
And that's not something that a lot of people are talking about. But the hyperactivity does not have to be external in physical ways. It can be internal, as in overthinking, obsessive thoughts, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So in women, it has a tendency more to manifest in the internal way, the hyperactivity, than the external way as it does with males.
Okay.
And that's just one example of multiple differences in how it shows up. But trauma, you know, specifically developmental trauma that happens when you're a child.
Right.
As your belief system is being formed, because I think it's the Jesuits who say, you know, give me a boy at 5 and I'll give you a man at 7, because all of your belief system is formed by the time you're 7 years old.
Wow. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's really important to remember that when it comes to neurodivergence, because it just is your normal.
Right.
You know, it's not anything.
You're only divergent from some weird normal, right?
Right. What the hell is that?
Exactly.
You know, but for me,
the
what it did
was pretty weird.
It is.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I belong to a group on Facebook, and anybody who's listening is neurodivergent, or nonlinear, as they call themselves. I really encourage you to investigate this group. It's called the Octopus Movement. And it was started by this guy named Perry Noppert, who's in the Netherlands, who is neurodivergent himself and has 2 kids who are as well.
Okay.
And it's all about normalizing neurodivergence. And I was on a Zoom call with a bunch of people from the group one time, and one of the guys said, there is no such thing as neurodivergence. There is just there's no such thing as typical. There is only neurodivergence with conditioning.
That makes sense. Yes.
And I believe that. I had never heard anybody put it that way before, but we all get conditioned.
Totally.
Parentally, family-wise, culturally.
Yeah.
You know, in school with authority figures, absolutely. And so what it takes to go back to the nervous system regulation and meditation subject, that's what it takes.
Right.
Because that's what it took me to even go, you know what? Maybe the fact that I always brought a lamp into my corporate office wasn't a quirk.
A lamp?
Because I brought a lamp because I couldn't stand the overhead light.
Oh, wow.
It bothered me so badly. And everybody thought I was cool and bougie, and I was okay with that. So I'm like, I'll take that mantle on.
That's interesting, because I had another coworker that was really, really sensitive to the overhead lights.
That comes with neurodivergence. I'm not diagnosing them.
Right.
Okay.
Right. No.
Be clear about that.
I'm just saying that's only the second time I've heard that. But
tactile. People who are neurodivergent have a tendency to be very tactile. Okay. I will not go within over 3 feet without something soft to rub in my fingers.
Interesting.
It calms me.
Yeah.
You know, textures, food textures.
It's like having that blanket when you're a kid, right?
Absolutely.
You're just carrying that with. Nothing wrong with that.
No. Now, I mean, I'm not going to be Pigpen and go everywhere with a blanket, but like I wear soft clothes.
Yeah.
So if when I'm not with the blanket, then I can rub my fingers on my shirt or my pants or whatever.
It's soothing. You're self-soothing. Yeah.
It's self-soothing, exactly. And people with neurodivergence often have that behavior. Things around food texture, to all the way to the extreme of you can't have your food touching. Like the pea will never come near the mashed potato on the plate.
My wife has that, yes.
Right?
But I think that's because I don't think it's necessarily, she does not, Japanese people have a plate for everything. So
so that's a cultural thing.
Has a plate, right?
As a
so, like she has to eat all of one thing and then eat all of another thing, and where you and I grow up with like flavor combos, right? We like mixing our shit together.
I do.
Yeah,
and as a cook, it's like I need to have all of it in the one bite.
See, exactly.
Right? I want the sweet, salty, umami, crunchy, creamy, all in one bite.
Yeah.
But it is that level of hyper focus. And you can have it about one thing in your life and whatever, but when you stretch it out over multiple things,
yes.
You know what I mean? Then perhaps, if it's of interest, you could there are definitely reliable online exams that you can take.
Okay.
That will tell you. And I am at, and there's a very reliable website. I don't remember what it is. If you want me to, I'll email it to you so you can put it with the show notes.
Yeah.
And according to this, I am like very, very low level autistic.
Okay.
Okay. And because of my hypervigilance due to the developmental trauma,
right?
Because that's what I believed I needed to do to stay safe.
Right.
I can recognize an eye twitch and know what that means from somebody that I know.
Okay. Right.
Okay.
Right.
So, and most autistic people have a challenging time reading social cues like that.
Right.
Okay. So in a lot of ways, and the other thing too is.
So maybe they're like canceling each other out almost. It's like, it's possible, right? Because like you said, you're hypervigilant because of trauma, right? So that means that's becoming like this trait that, everything's either a superpower or a curse, right? It's both. It's always both. It's just your judgment of it, right? Says what it is.
And the judgment you take on from other people.
Totally. Yes. But yeah.
Got a lot to do with it.
Yeah. So even if you come out, just say God makes some brains better, and we call that neurodivergent, right? But then you have trauma and it sort of counteracts it. You never know, right? I don't know.
Well, I don't think it counteracts it as much as it adds to it. Okay. This is why I said I don't know that I was born this way.
Right. Yeah.
I think the neurochemical changes that have occurred in my neurological system over the years due to certain things like the hypervigilance have created an ADHD / low-level autistic state of being.
Okay, gotcha.
That might not have been there when I was born.
Right.
But then, you also have the whole epigenetic subject, right?
Sure.
Because I've said for years, I've called it emotional DNA for 30 years.
Okay.
Okay.
Like that. Yeah.
That it is not just an environmental / nurture situation, that it actually gets into your DNA.
Totally.
Because why else is alcoholism generational?
Right.
Why else is addiction generational?
It makes no sense to me. That's the only thing that gets coded is DNA.
Right. But the study of epigenetics, which is fascinating,
totally cool.
Which is because I don't think they know enough about DNA to know where to look for it. That's my non-scientific theory. Okay.
Right.
But epigenetics is starting to prove that. And part of the reason they haven't been able to do this until the last 20 years or so, around 25, 30 maybe, is because they haven't had the testing available to them to prove it.
Okay.
And if you're a scientist, you want a double-blind peer-reviewed study.
Yeah, you don't study anything that you're not going to.
You don't want anecdotes.
Right, exactly.
You don't want life experience. To you, that means nothing. It needs to be a double-blind peer-reviewed study.
Right.
So the first one that was done and taken seriously was on the progeny of Holocaust victims.
Wow.
And what they discovered through this testing was that the kids had so much anxiety. There was a higher propensity for addiction and alcoholism, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And they were only Holocaust victims. And then they tested a I forget what they call it, like a placebo group, for lack of a better way of putting it.
Control group, yeah.
A control group, right. And so they realized that it was it was that. Then this fascinating study was done in 2014 in England, where they took a bunch of male mice And every time they fed them, they then did something to spook them. They like slammed a little door down, or they shocked them with a low-level electrical shock or whatever.
Torture.
So they do this for a period of time.
Right.
And then they introduce them to some female mice. And as mice are wont to do, they got busy.
Wow. Wait a minute. So food, scare, sex?
Yes.
Okay.
Essentially. Right. So that they ended up creating baby mice, and they took those progeny and put them separately. And when they went to feed them, they jumped.
They were scared already. Scared then horny.
Right. Right. But that proves, depending on.
Where's the babe?
Depending on, your scientific stance and background and et cetera. But that proved to the scientists who did this study that was passed on through the DNA, because it's not like the kids were already born and that happened then could have replicated that behavior. Yeah. They didn't exist.
Right.
Yeah,
there's like monkey observation stories about that too. Right. Where like you take a bunch of monkeys and you train them a behavior, right? Like I can't remember what it was. It was like there's a banana hanging from the top of the cage, and whenever somebody would start climbing up to the banana, they would like spray all the monkeys with water, right? And they did this like for a long time, so all the monkeys in the cage knew, right? And then slowly over time, they would like swap out all the monkeys that got sprayed with water. And eventually, nobody remembered getting sprayed with water. It was amazing. Okay, internet glitch over. Yay. So the monkey story finished. So we're getting close to an hour, so we should start wrapping this up, Staci B. This has been a blast, but let's figure out like how people can best find Staci B out there. So it's stacib.com. Come back as often as you like, because I need more help with my nervous system regulation. And I'm definitely going to check out the octopus movement and email me that other link that you were telling me about.
Okay. Let me make myself a note to do that. So I remember
a note to do that. Yeah. And, this has been a blast, Staci. Thank you.
Yeah. It's just, I think it's such an important subject, and I'm not doing this for money.
Right.
I'm not doing this for any kind of recognition.
Yeah.
It's just, this is fucking important.
It totally is fucking important.
And for everybody, because, I've had people say to me,
any sort of diagnosis. This applies to all humans.
Right. And I've had people say to me, why do you think this is so important? And I'm like, look around.
Right.
We're living in a world of trauma zombies.
You're right.
Right? The road rage, the getting pissed off because the person in front of you has 10 items in the cart when the limit's 9.
Yeah.
All that. And I'm not on any kind of pulpit here. I'm not saying I'm perfect with this stuff.
You're observing.
But I at least recognize it and then do what I can to change my behavior in the moment.
Right.
Right. And I just think we would just live in such a different world if people were willing to do even just a little bit of work.
Right. Yes. Not utopia. Don't think that. But way better.
But better.
Way better. If we could just figure out how to put down that fucking bag of Doritos.
Well, and I just, I know you're joking around and I get that. It just goes so much beyond that because it affects our relationships. It affects your ability to work, it affects your health.
Totally.
It's so.
Like Doritos is probably the most benign sort of like stuffy.
Right. Right. Well, but you know what? I mean,
yes,
your Doritos every once in a while aren't going to kill anybody.
Right. Exactly.
It's when you're buying a bag every 3 days and consuming it that, you might want to take a look at that.
Yes.
It just, again,
Pick
I
your
just
poison,
think it's,
as they say.
Right.
Are you an overworker, an overdrinker, an overeater, or an over, or you addicted to sex, porn, video games?
And if you're okay
social
with
media,
that, If you're okay with that, God bless, go forth.
Yeah, and the thing is it's all it comes down to that moderation thing. Can you moderate?
Right. Right.
Do you have something inside you that can say maybe this is one too many drinks today?
Right.
Then you might be on the road.
Well, it's interesting because the medical community estimates that people only admit a third of what they actually consume when they're questioned by their doctors about how much do you drink or how much do you smoke or eat or whatever the case might be.
Right.
So, yeah, we all lie to ourselves.
Totally.
It's how we get by.
True. Staci, this has been a blast. Come back anytime you want.
It's been a lot of fun. Yes. It really has been.
Thank you. You have a good one.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks for taking the time to ride along with us on another episode of Vroom Vroom Veer. For podcast info and show notes, be sure to head over to vvveer.com. That's VVER.com. Man, that's fun to say. And we'll catch up with you next time here on Vroom Vroom Veer.